Hello and welcome to another episode of Intuitive Conversations. I'm Tamara Franz.
And I'm Chantelle Neufeld.
It's been a while since we recorded a podcast, and we thought that this being the rest of the latter end of 2020, it might be a good opportunity to reflect back on the year, this year that's been so different than what we would have expected a year ago, and do some reflecting on what's happened in 2020, how we've handled it, and looking forward a little bit to what our hopes might be for 2021.
Yeah.
So
I learned I was really quite human this year.
yeah, I think we all did, right?
Sometimes you think, okay, I got life figured out, and then you get a curveball like 2020, and you're like, what?
Yeah,
okay, I need to take myself to therapy here.
Yeah, until therapy was canceled too, right?
Right. Well, Zoom therapy.
Yeah. I think that's at the best of times, that's the challenge, right? Is that you think you've got life figured out. You think you're finally in a space where, I've got my ducks in a row and I can move forward now. And then wham, something happens. But who would have thought a year ago now, who would have thought that
we would be shocked?
Yeah.
We would be shocked at so many things. So you had a list of questions there. I thought they were excellent. So
I do, yeah.
Each answer those.
All right, my first question, Chantelle, is what have been the biggest challenges with 2020 and the pandemic?
Well, I guess just another layer of fear to overcome. Like I feel like it's kind of like a spiral. Like you learn a lesson and then you kind of come back around and learn it in a deeper way.
Yeah.
So the fear paradigm, well, there's like two different sides of the fear, and I've been trying to rise above both. So like the one side is the conspiracy theory side, and then the other side is the, oh my God, I'm going to die from COVID side. Or a loved one, right? So then you've got both of those sides, and you have kind of proof of both of those sides. And like I don't want to be someone who disregards either side, because you got to take all information into consideration. And at the end of the day, there's not much I can do about either side. So rising above the fear is the answer. And I do that through meditation. But I mean, it's easier said than done.
Yeah, I was going to ask about handling the fear, because fear is an energy. Every emotion is an energy, right? And you can't block it or pretend it's not there. For me, the fear has been more about just unknown. How is this going to play out? Where will we land up? How long will this go on? What parts of my world will unravel, or the larger world will unravel the longer this goes on? So, yeah, there is fear on a lot of levels for a lot of people.
And I don't want to minimize those fears. But at the same time, I see people who are living their lives not in fear for the most part, and just kind of more in observation and isn't that interesting mode, and sort of being okay with a lot of things that people are not okay with, like being okay with dying, being okay with someone else dying. And I mean, I've lost loved ones close to me, and I have people who are, what do they say, immune compromised. So like I'm not a stranger to that fear. And yet there's so much freedom in just being okay with whatever happens. That's one of the greatest lessons that my teacher in Winnipeg taught me. It wasn't a teaching example. It wasn't a teaching. It was an example that he set. When things came up that were not planned for, or there was an interruption, or just something happened that would, the typical person would be like, oh my gosh, my day is ruined. He'd be like, isn't that interesting? And he would just go with the flow. And he'd just be like, everything was sort of like meant to be. Like he had planned it. Like he pretended that he had planned it, and that he was happy about it, even if it was unpleasant.
Yeah, that's a great place to be, in that place of no judgment, of just, okay, it looks maybe on the outside like this could be a bad thing, but if I just wait for it, maybe it will turn into something else.
It's like that flow instead of resistance.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
For me, a big challenge has been just my working life, because my home life hasn't changed a whole lot, except for the fact that I can't travel to Winnipeg to see my older children and my dear friend who lives there, which is something I would have done monthly probably. But big changes around work, having to work from home for several months in the spring, and then in the fall being suddenly reassigned to remote teaching, which kind of threw me into a situation I have never been in before, and teaching a wide range of kids from, in several grades with a really wide range of levels, and all of the preparation that takes, because teaching remotely takes so much more prep. But what you were saying about your teacher, and isn't that interesting? It's almost like when life throws such a curveball at you, it's almost a permission to just let go of all kinds of things that, okay, this is the way I was used to doing it. These are the expectations that I'm used to meeting or putting pressure on myself to meet. And now all of a sudden there's this wide open field. And what am I going to do with the freedom that this gives me to move in new directions and try new things?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I find myself teetering on the balance of, okay, I'm teaching these remote students and I feel super responsible for giving them good programming and literacy and in math and trying to keep up with everybody. And at the same time, I have no control over what work gets done at home. I have no control over all the background noise coming from different households. There's so much I have to let go of. And once I can get to that point, it does create some space of freedom.
I love the word freedom. A lot of people are saying that's their word for 2021.
Freedom. So which is given all the restrictions that we've been having to live under.
And
people are seeing the freedom.
I just see the systems that were not working anymore, just across the board, that there will be more freedom in the future because of the pandemic, like because of all of these changes and people having to adapt and just seeing, oh, well, I never thought to do it differently than we'd done it for our whole lives, but this works so much better, those types of attitudes.
Yeah.
And also just giving myself freedom to live. There's been so many changes. I was talking to my doctor just the other day. So many, like almost daily or weekly, and you probably know this from your job too, like changes in the rules, changes in the guidelines that are almost impossible to even, so everyone sort of has to start using their judgment, has to start living more in a, I don't even know what the word for it is. My word is freedom. But it's not the freedom to, like do whatever you want, regardless of other people. It's a more of a win-win attitude where, like, I don't know, I'm going everywhere in all directions here. My brain is opening a million tabs. What I'm trying to say is that when someone makes a rule, there's almost like 100 subset rules underneath it. And often it's impossible to follow something. So you have to start using your judgment instead of just being a follower or a sheep or whatever.
And it's almost like that mind control method where, abusers will control, and I'm not saying that the government's abusive or anything, but I'm just as a metaphor, go left, no, go right. Buy me a Mars bar. No, I told you to buy me a coffee crisp. And you play with somebody, and they're trying so hard to keep up with the directives until they suddenly reach a space where they say, I can't win. And in that moment, I can't win by following what I thought were the rules. And you sort of open up the space where I need to open myself up to a new way of doing things now, because I'm going to drive myself nuts. I'm going to go crazy trying to, and I think all of these systems too that have just become so overburdened with bureaucracy and rules and, maybe now
who have no idea what's happening on the ground floor. Yeah.
The image that's coming to my mind, if you've seen the movie Up, where the man has just chained himself to this house, and his wife hoops on, and he can't let go of the house and all of the belongings and everything. And he's made this new friend, but he betrayed his friend because he was so attached to this house. And the boy takes off, and he finally realizes what's important, and he throws all the furniture out of the house. And every time he shoves something heavy out, the house just lightens up a bit and starts floating a little more. The balloons are pulling it up. And I feel like maybe we have this opportunity now to drop some of the baggage around all these systems that we've just been working so hard to keep in place.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, for me, being in education, I see a system that's overloaded with just, we try to do so much, and we try to be everything. We've kind of in a way abrogated roles that belong to parents. And at some point you have to just stop and say, this is putting too much pressure on everybody, and how can we let go of some of the baggage?
Yeah, that could be a whole podcast about
Yeah.
how that system has been focused mainly on like language arts and math, leaving, the half of the people who are good at the other stuff sort of feeling less than when they're geniuses.
Yeah. And that's it. How can we honor genius more? Not just in education, but in all of these systems.
Mm-hmm.
How can we honor genius more, give people more choice, trust people more to follow the leading of their own hearts and souls,
mm-hmm.
and stop putting so many burdens on everybody?
Yeah. Well, we got one question in.
Yeah. Well, I think we covered a few other ones on here, but what have you missed the most in 2020?
Is it the theater? I'm sorry. It's so trite, but that's what I missed the most. I really loved the theater.
Oh, yeah.
I love like the energy of even like a concert, or like even a few days before the pandemic started, I was at a Jets game, and just the energy of everyone cheering, and just those types of things. Like they say that our heart has a resonance, and like I've noticed it almost the most when talking with you, because when we're in the same room together, we sync up a lot better. I don't know how to even say it, but that's what I've missed the most, is connecting to people in that way, in their aura, like just
the palpable energy.
Yeah. And
that's
you?
funny. Well, now that you said that, I was going to say the regular get-togethers with our kids and friends, and it is true. I mean, that is the most important thing to me. But when you mentioned that right away, everything inside me just went, yes. All of those events where people gather together. We have a big summer festival here in town, which was canceled, of course. And Joel and I are huge concert goers. We love rock concerts and symphony concerts and opera and you name it. Like we just live music. So yes, going to live music, going to movies, just being in shopping malls where the buzz of people walking around. I love people watching.
My mom would always say that I did that when I was like 3. Anytime she took me to in a restaurant, I wouldn't eat. I would just sit there watching the people. I get it now, but anyways. I totally agree. Like there's just something about it, and we're not gonna take that for granted in the future as much,
right?
In the future when we actually can start seeing each other and stuff. We're noticing the value of other people, like our neighbors, the value of community.
Yeah. And I think, one of my questions was to be, what has surprised you the most? And I was going to say what surprised me the most was just all of the backlash against regulations. And I never would have expected that these laws or regulations meant to keep people safe would be seen with such suspicion by people. Because I guess in my brain, I thought, well, the world has been through pandemics before. We all know about the plague and the Middle Ages and how many people died and how things spread so rapidly. And, surely people would just, so that was a shock to me. But I feel like what we're talking about now with, the need that we have to be around people and to feel that energy of people gathering together, when that's taken away, it makes us a little crazy, I think. And we've seen, especially in the US, south of the border, that gatherings have happened, but by and large, it's been angry gatherings, people protesting, people, getting together to rebel against regulations and things. And so I don't know if there's something about when we're denied that opportunity to be around each other and to feed off each other's energy, and maybe there's something about us that doesn't find release, and
Well, yeah,
way to do it.
it's triggering people in different ways. Like with my past, any sort of authoritarian thing is going to trigger me. The changing of the rules constantly, with my training in hypnosis, like that's one way that people can hypnotize, and like sometimes even do over the pulpit, is just an overloading of facts or changing stuff up, and the person is just so overloaded and confused that whatever command or suggestion bypasses the conscious mind, goes directly to the subconscious mind. So I'm always aware for stuff like that. And I think the thing that triggered me the most about the rules was the double standard. Like, why can the huge stores be open but not the small businesses? But that's not the only double standard. There were just across the board, like, why can these people go to school without a mask and those people can't go at all? Why is this province so locked down and that one isn't? It's like
you see what happens when, as long as we're more or less in agreement about how we run things in society, we kind of chug along pretty well. But when something like this happens, where we have to all of a sudden drastically change the way things are done, all the little cracks and fissures between us sort of break open. And I feel like now, what you were talking about before, all of these systems and things, I think we're in a slow unravel already, because they're just not sustainable. We're not, our entire paradigm is not sustainable. And so it was kind of in this slow burn, but now things heated up dramatically, and
we have no choice but to
with people
evolve
coming
somehow.
from their, and all these different viewpoints about where do we need to go from here, and this isn't being handled right, or this is being handled right, and the uncertainty is just kind of driving us a little bit mad.
And I feel that seeking to understand is the most important thing. Like when you look in the States, how they're so divided, like it seems like half is believing one thing and half is believing the other thing. But there are people who can still be friends with the opposite side, or even just not pick a side at all, where, like there are more options than just the few that people think they're given. But seeking to understand is just so much better, because you see that the reason people are choosing the things they're choosing is because of, well, usually fear, but it's just usually a coping mechanism. It was a strategy that worked good for them in the past, and that's what they're choosing to go with. And
it reminds me of Brene Brown. And do we assume that people are doing the best they can? Given what they know, given where they're coming from, do we assume that they're doing the best they can? It's a whole different shift when you look at people from that standpoint.
Yeah. So to wrap up, go ahead.
Is it 20 minutes already?
Almost. 1 minute
oh my
left.
Goodness. Okay, hopes for 2021. Quick.
Hopes for 2021. Like you said, systems are unraveling, and I want to see them move towards kindness, respect, freedom, open-mindedness, kids' genius being celebrated, more community, like people relying on their neighbors. And you?
I'm hoping, we talked about freedom. I'm hoping that this whole pandemic and the way it has changed things gives people more permission to follow the call of their souls and to dream up new possibilities. Because I think as things unravel, we need new vision and new ideas and new things to grow in place of what we're. Kyle Cease always says the reason we fear change is because we can measure losing. We can't
Yeah.
we can't measure yet what we will gain. And so I think for more people to just open themselves to the leading of spirit and listen to the call of their souls and trust
Mm.
that when something disappears, then something new comes into its place, and we can be part of that, which is really exciting.
Yes, it is.
If we let ourselves go in that space and not sort of cling too hard to what we're used to.
Mm. Yeah. Well, change is a challenge, but
Yeah.
I think, as we say at the end of every podcast, keep following your heart song. That's just
Right.
like so important. So
Yep.
I will leave off with that.
All right.
Till next time, everyone, keep following your
Happy
heart song.
2021, everybody.
Yay!